What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. A couple of weeks ago, my buddies over at Madfinger Games invited me to come take a look at a very early build of the new Night Ops update for Gray Zone Warfare. I happily accepted that invitation, and today I can share a little bit of the information about the update and specifically about the new equipment that is the night vision goggles, the lasers, the illuminators, the infrared lasers, and all of the white light attachments that can go on your weapons, and show you what it looks like in game. And I'm also going to compare it a little bit to what it looks like in the real world. This is an area where I have a little bit of experience and I can do a little bit of show and tell to kind of communicate to you guys what I thought of these new attachments, how it feels in the game, and how it's going to affect gameplay, because I think it's rather interesting. And frankly, I think that the way that Gray Zone Warfare has implemented these changes and these additions is quite good, and maybe even like among the best I've seen in a video game. So with that said, let's get right to it. The Night Ops update is going to add a dynamic day and night cycle. There's also a whole host of new improvements, and really today I want to focus specifically on the equipment. Obviously, if the sun goes down, we need to be able to see and we need to be able to fight. So on the equipment side, we now have 3 different night vision devices. We also have a couple of different ways of attaching those night vision devices to our helmet so that we can use them. And then we have a whole host of infrared illuminators, infrared lasers, visible lasers, and white light flashlights that can be used on various weapons. So I think it's worth starting off by talking about the night vision devices themselves. And I'm just going to go wave top overlay, just general information about each one. And then for each of the attachments, I'll kind of do the same. But I'm not going to necessarily go into the specifics. I may not even hit every device. I just want to talk about like these big buckets and then describe how I think it's going to impact the way that the game is played and how that compares to real life. So the 3 different night vision devices that I got to check out, and the 3 that I believe are going to be included in this update. First is a PVS-7 Delta. This is like the tier 1, the lowest tier available of the night vision devices. It's a binocular style night vision device, very old gen. It has a single 40-degree field of view tube centered on the face, but it does take both your eyes, so you lose a lot of peripheral vision, and it is a green phosphor tube. It doesn't do a lot of amplifying. Some of the more advanced tubes in the game actually have auto brightness control and auto gating, which I'll explain just very briefly here in a second. But these PVS-7 Deltas don't seem to be able to do any of that. I thought that they were going to be useless. That turned out not to be the case. And I'll show you a little bit of footage and kind of describe this in a little bit. But in the night version that we were playing in, there was plenty of illumination. There was a full moon. You could see like reasonably well without nods out in the open. But then when you get into really dark areas or into vegetation, it is certainly helpful to have nods so you can drop them. We were just exploring and fighting in the starter town, and in that area, at least, the enemy didn't seem to have any night vision of their own, so we had a huge advantage. So despite them being these really old tubes, it's still, you know, kind of a superpower to be able to get in the bushes or get in the dark corner of a room, drop nods, and have to jump on the enemy in that way. One step up from the PVS-7 Deltas is the PVS-14. I have a set of 14s here. I'll show you guys in a second after I get through the rest of these. The PVS-14s is, you know, one step up from the PVS-7 Deltas. It is a single tube, similar to the PVS-7 Deltas, but it only occupies one side of the screen. In the case of the build that we played, it was on the right side of the screen, so it's basically, you know, a single tube on the right side. It is still green phosphor, has a similar capability to those PVS-7 Deltas, but did seem to be of slightly superior quality. And because now you have more peripherals, you have an eye available, so you could use white light. You can keep the nods down all the time and still benefit from the ambient light and the illumination of the world around you, but still use like an infrared laser to aim if you need to. And then one step up from those PVS-14s is a much more modern set of nods called the PVS-31 Alphas. PVS-31 Alphas are articulating dual tube, modern white phosphor, you know, mil-spec, used in special operations night vision goggles that are frankly excellent. I have a lot of time on PVS-14s. I have a lot of time on PVS-31 Alphas. The implementation of the 31 Alphas in the game are quite convincing. They look damn good. I did notice the auto brightness control. So what that means is like if you're looking at a particularly dark area, you'll notice that with all the nods, you'll get an increased amount of noise because the tubes are really fighting for the ambient light so that it can amplify it and put it back in your face. But then if you pivot and you look like directly at the full moon, auto brightness control will kick in. And so you don't get the, if you're amplifying all that light, you can wash out the nods and create just like these big bright spots that make it difficult to see. So the auto brightness control kicks in, reduces the brightness, reduces the gain in the nods, and makes it a little bit easier to see. That seemed to be implemented well. And with the PVS-31 Alphas, you have 2 tubes. Each one of those is giving you 40 degrees field of view. There's some overlay in the center, so you're not getting a true 80, but you're getting somewhere between a 60 and a 70 degree field of view, and it looks quite good. As far as like actually putting these on your helmet, they have implemented like an attachment system. So you have to have a helmet and you have to have the right hardware to attach them. So here I have a set of PVS-14s. Again, that's that single tube. These happen to be white phosphor. The ones in the game are the green phosphor tubes, but otherwise like the housing and everything is quite similar, near identical. In the game, you do have a couple of different ways of attaching your night vision to your helmet. In the game, probably the easiest way to do it is with a Wilcox style G24 mount. That's what this thing is. So this will go on the helmet. You'll notice that there's a button on the side. You push that button, it articulates down. So that's how the nods are actually getting in front of your face. And in addition to this G24 mount, you also need a dovetail mount. So here I have a dovetail mount on these PVS-14s. And the way that works is you take that dovetail, you slide it into that G24 Wilcox mount. They'll click into place, and then you can start to see, yes, this is taking shape. This is starting to work. So then you take your little helmet, and on the front of all of these helmets, you've got a female end of the housing that you can then mount your nods to. You push your nods into that housing, click it over, that G24 is then locked into place, and then to use the nods, you can drop them just like that. So that is implemented in Gray Zone Warfare. It is a dovetail mount. They do have a G24. They also have a Rhino mount for the PVS-7 Deltas, which is just a different attachment method. I actually think I have a Rhino mount. Yeah, so I actually did have a Rhino mount laying around. So this is just an older version of that same kind of helmet hardware. The difference here is there's a different attachment point on the front that can be used in Gray Zone. You can also just use the G24 for the 14s or the 31 Alphas, but there is different hardware on here that is also modeled in Gray Zone Warfare. In the Rhino mount, as opposed to the Wilcox, doesn't have that quick release lever, and instead it's just like this tension system where if you yank on it, it's hard to do it with my hands, but yeah, it's just got this tension system. So when you apply force, it just clicks up into place, and then it clicks down into place as well, like so. So in order to use that, you have to have a J-arm, and you have to have the PVS-7 Deltas. That J-arm goes into the Wilcox, or goes into the Rhino mount. The Rhino mount goes on the helmet. This sounds complicated. I swore to myself I wasn't going to make this video complicated. I wasn't going to nerd out too hard. Bottom line, there's 2 different ways to attach nods to your helmet. Gray Zone models, the G24 and the Rhino mount. And it works great. All right, so in addition to the night vision devices, obviously there's a bunch of new attachments that can go on your weapon to help you fight at nighttime, and they've done a great job, in my opinion, of giving you the same kind of abilities that you would expect in the real world to be able to fight at night. So when you have night vision on, you can see infrared light. So this is used often to aim or to illuminate. And there's various devices that can do that. So this is my Mark 18. It's kind of set up for night fighting, and some things to consider here. So certain optics, for example, the EOTech EXPS-3 or the EOTech, I think it's the EXPS-2 that we have in Gray Zone Warfare, are built for fighting at night. There's a night vision mode on these, and you can use them to shoot even with night vision on. So the problem with some optics, obviously, is if they're too bright, you look through them with your night vision devices, it washes out the tube and it becomes unusable. That's not the case with the EOTech, and I was using the EOTech in Gray Zone Warfare, and it functioned well. It looked almost exactly like it does in real life. I think I can dig up some old footage of me shooting under nods. So that's called passive aiming. So if I aim down sights and my tube aligns with this optic and I'm able to see the reticle, that's passively aiming through the optic in order to engage my target. The other option is to actively aim using another aiming device. That could be a visible laser. It could be an infrared laser. On here, I have a Steiner OTAL-C. This is an acceptable but an entry-level laser aiming module that is only capable of emitting an infrared laser. So I have that attached to a couple thumb buttons here. So if I push the thumb button, it'll fire this infrared laser that's, co-witness appropriately, not co-witness, but it is 0 to my gun so that I know a certain distance. As long as my laser's on the target, that's where the bullet's going to land. And you can do that now in Gray Zone Warfare. A lot of you guys are familiar with this concept from other games like Ready or Not, or, you guys have guns and do this stuff too. So that is doable now in Gray Zone Warfare, and they also have a new keybind that allows you to quickly cant the weapon so that you can switch back and forth between active aiming and passive aiming, and you can do it really, really quick. And I was using it a ton. One of the things that they do great in this game is when you drop your nods, whether it's the 31 Alphas or the 14s or the PVS-7 Deltas, you get that same kind of like claustrophobic feeling that you have under nods in real life. You have that highly restricted field of view, you have peripheral vision, but it's not particularly great, and you lose a little bit of situational awareness on the periphery when you put the nods down. You also have a distorted depth of field because your eyeball's going from right here to a couple inches in front of your face, so it's moving everything forward, and then you also have some depth of field blur, so you're not able to see the details on your weapon and stuff like that. All that's done extraordinarily well, but because it kind of gives you that sense of claustrophobia, it's good to be able to use the canted aiming keybind to clear your field of view. So you can aim down sights, and I found myself regularly like aiming passively through the reticle and then toggling over to a canted position so that I can just see better because I only have 40 degrees of vision to my front, and then switching back and forth. And I found myself regularly switching between passively aiming and then firing, shooting off an IR laser to aim, and then even also shooting a white light. So that's the other thing worth mentioning here, is the white lights in the game also require a mount, and strangely enough, they're actually like a very similar setup to this. So I've got a Surefire Scout mount on here, or Surefire Scout light on here with a mount, and that mount is bringing the light closer to the gun so that it has a shorter profile, and it's on like the lower right portion, and that's the default setting in Gray Zone Warfare as well. So you can run something that's like almost this exact same build minus the magnifier. I'm sure we'll get those eventually, but they're not implemented yet. The other thing worth mentioning is that they correctly model muzzle flash depending on whether or not you've got a suppressor or not. So this is a short-barreled rifle. I have a suppressor on it. That suppressor obviously reduces the sound signature. It also reduces the amount of muzzle flash significantly. So if you're shooting under nods and you don't have a suppressor or you don't have a great flash hider, you'll notice that there's like a fireball coming out of the end of the gun, and it washes out your nods. That's why like the auto brightness control and the auto gating is so important. And in Gray Zone, whenever you put a can on your gun, it does significantly better. And that's also evidence whenever you see some of the shooting I was doing without the suppressor, and particularly with the handgun, and you get a lot of flash. But that's how this one's set up. I have not yet tried any of the LPVOs or the bolt gun in this build. I did throw a bolt gun out here, so like my long gun back there doesn't have any ability to shoot at night. I certainly would not be able to put my nods behind that scope and see anything on the other side. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of night fighting options we get with LPVOs or we get with bolt action guns. And if you see this gun behind me with the low powered variable optic on top, I've got a piggybacked red dot, which is capable of allowing me to shoot passively at nighttime. So a potential option there that I expect we will eventually see in Gray Zone is the option to use additional optics like that, so that you have a gun with a little bit of magnification on it, but you also have the ability to shoot passively so that you can still fight at night. That's a great option for a gun that you're going to have to go out and do a lot of different stuff with, or you're going to be out for a long time and you're going to have to suffer through several day and night cycles. Talked about the rifles. There's also options in the game for pistols. This is a Glock 17 clone, very similar to what you have in Gray Zone Warfare. I have a white light on it and I have a red dot on it so that it's totally usable at nighttime. You just dial the brightness way down on the red dot so that you can shoot under nods without washing out the nods, and you still have a white light with a thumb toggle on it so that you can quickly activate it if you need to shoot with the white light. And so that's all now possible in Gray Zone Warfare as well, and it feels quite authentic, feels quite realistic, and I'm overall just like, I'm quite impressed with the way that they've implemented all of this, frankly. So rather than go through every single attachment that is available that I got to play with in this update so far, I just want to talk about like the way that the gameplay kind of works and feels. And I think that this PEC 15 clone is worth mentioning. So this exact device is not available in Gray Zone, but there's a whole bunch of options that are similar and devices that'll do stuff that's a lot like this. So this PEC 15, quite common in the US military, is a laser aiming module that gives you a visible red laser. It also gives you an infrared aiming laser for active shooting off of the IR laser. And it also has an IR illuminator in it. And I can dial up all those settings by, first making sure that the laser emitters themselves are not protected by the caps. And then I can choose the settings that I desire by articulating this knob here and selecting what I want, whether it's, I want the illuminator on and the laser on, or I want a visible red laser, or I want just the IR laser. So I can choose those settings here. And then when I push this button, or if I plug a cable into the back of it and attach that cable to a pressure pad on my rifle and I push that pressure pad, it will automatically fire according to the settings that I have selected. So quite the diverse and capable device. And these same settings, that same functionality is modeled now in Gray Zone Warfare. So the quick action bar, or whatever that menu is called, where you can right now quickly, eat something or throw a tourniquet on or whatever, they've added a new tier in there that is called the tactical device. And they refer to your lights and your lasers and your illuminators as tactical devices. It is, I think, T by default. You press and hold T, and what that'll do is it'll bring up an in-game UI, and it'll show you all your lights and lasers. And then you use the scroll wheel to scroll through the settings that you want to activate, and you can turn them on or off. So you can, for example, say, all right, I just want my white light to turn on when I push the tactical button, or I just want the IR laser to turn on, or I want the IR laser and the illuminator. And it's quite intuitive, and frankly, it reminded me quite a bit of dialing up the selection that I wanted on a device like this, and so that I know whenever I activate my pressure pad exactly what's going to happen. And then what I also did is I rebound my tactical button to a thumb mouse button, and I rebound the can't button to a thumb mouse button. So I've got a little razor thing here. It has two thumb buttons on the side. And if I push one of the buttons, it'll cant the rifle. And if I push it again, it'll cant it back. If I push the other one, it'll activate whatever tactical devices I have selected. By doing that, I was very, very quickly able to toggle back and forth between canting, coming back, white light on, white light off, passive aim, vis laser on, IR laser on, and it was quite intuitive. And there were some moments there where I was toggling between it despite having just learned that system. I was seamlessly navigating those options and making the selections and the choices I wanted on the fly, and it felt really rewarding. It's very fun because it adds a layer of just dynamic gameplay that is rewarding, and you feel satisfied and accomplished whenever you're able to pull it off. I think the best example is I deliberately went in with a low tier build, just a stock M4 with a white light, an EOTech, and PVS-7 Deltas. So no laser aiming module. And I was passive aiming when I could without nods or with nods. When it was too dark, the white light came on. I had to eventually barricade in a building and drop nods. It's pitch black, but I know that they can't see a damn thing. So I'm pieing corners with PVS-7 Deltas down, smoking the first dude. Nods come up, white light comes on because I know there's potentially guys coming up the stairs behind him. And it just gave me a ton of options, and it felt fantastic. Overall, I think that Madfinger did a phenomenal job on this, at least the equipment that I've seen. I haven't seen any new tasks. I didn't get to explore beyond the starter towns. They really just wanted us to stress test the night vision equipment, and at least that piece feels really, really damn good. I think that this is very likely to breathe some fresh life into this game. I am certainly excited to dive back in and nerd out with my buddies. This was a quick once over the world. Drewski at one time did the best technical explanation of night vision, and then also compared it to video games. The video is freaking fantastic. I'll actually link that in the description below because Drew did a really, really good job. I didn't go into nearly that much detail, but I think that it was important to describe how this stuff can be used in the game and how I think it's going to have gameplay implications. And if you guys did enjoy today's video, I'd appreciate it if you considered subscribing to the channel for more stuff like this, liking the video. If you want to make fun of me, you can do that in the comments below, and I look forward to engaging with you guys there. I'm excited to dive back into Gray Zone Warfare, and I hope that you guys are too, and I hope to see you guys out there. I am Controlled Pairs. This has been Gray Zone Warfare, and I'll see you guys in the next one.